Business Takeout presents
The Cocktale Hour with L.A. Wade.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl. This is L.A. Wade, aka Cocktails with L.A. And I am so excited for today's show because I got to get my notebook and my pen because class will be in session today. We are gifted to have this beautiful woman sitting next to me on this call, Miss Mosa McNeilly. But before we continue with Mosa, I would like to give a shout out to Business Takeout, who presents the Cocktale Hour. What they like to do is inspire Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship. And this is the platform that I do it in the Cocktale Hour, where I speak to people in the arts, culture, sports, and entertainment industries about what they thirst for in life and in business. So today's yet intimate, sobering conversation is with none other than Mosa McNeilly. She is an artist, performer, educator, editor, consultant, and mentor. So she's got a lot of tricks up her sleeve. I don't know how she does it. We're going to find out in a second. And before we do that, I want to give a shout out to the people who are sponsoring this show for me today, Banky Designs. If we can just show a little love to our sponsor, Banky, that would be great. Cheers to Banky Designs. Cheers to you, Mosa. I know you had a birthday recently, so happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
I think you're Benjamin Button, aging in reverse. Big up to Banky too. I'm going to just take a sip for her. Are you drinking wine? What's in your glass?
I'm drinking filtered water.
Ooh, same. Like I said, it's a sobering conversation. You know, I also want to give a shout out to Brandon Hay from Black Daddies Club, from all things inclusivity and diversity, and just awesome man, and a really great balance of feminine, masculine energy in one human being who just loves the world. And I'm so grateful that he invited me to get to know Mosa McNeilly. So thank you, Brandon. She has definitely become, you know, all things wonderful that reflects back something that you sometimes hide about yourself and you don't know if anyone else sees it, but then she'll reflect it back to you. It's awesome. It's been great working with you. If for all of those who don't know, Mosa is the editor of my upcoming short anthology, The Adventures of a Recovering Sex Addict, which I'm going to be dropping on October 11th. So stay tuned for that. That's if she gives me the go-ahead, because she's a hardcore editor. And so I don't know if I'm going to make my deadlines.
We'll make it. We'll make it.
We'll make it. We'll make it. But okay, so I listed a whole bunch of things, Mosa. Artist, performer, educator, editor, consultant, mentor. If you could only choose one of those things, what would it be, and what do these roles mean to you?
Well, artist would have to be the one if I have to choose one.
Wow, you didn't even hesitate.
No, it's easy. They all fall under that umbrella for me. As an artist, well, performing is an art as well. It's another, so I work in visual arts and performance. Education, it's all arts-based, Black arts education that I do. Consulting, it's always about, well, I guess the consulting piece might not always be about the arts, but I always find a way to get it in there.
Well, well, it's definitely consultation and education can sometimes overlap with one another, because you can't spend any time with you and not get, you know, some advice, but also get educated simultaneously.
Oh, I hope I'm not giving you unsolicited advice.
No, it's not unsolicited. It's definitely welcomed. And there's a warmness about you that I really appreciate. And where does that light come from? You know, there's when we think, and you work in the Black experience, in the melanated experience, and many of us that do that, you know, we carry the weight of that oppression and sometimes can't see the light through that tunnel. What do you tap into to stay so positive?
Well, I am always reveling in the magnificence of Blackness, and I'm always imagining great futures of possibility, of Black freedom. So that's what keeps me going. And
Mm,
yes, I do feel the weight too, especially in my arts practice. I'm working with Middle Passage memory, which is a very heavy topic, and it's been really challenging to work with that over the last several years.
what does that look like? Middle passage memory.
Middle Passage memory. Well, the term Middle Passage refers to the journey across the Atlantic Ocean that the slave ships made over that 400-year period of forced migration and the transatlantic slave trade.
Hmm.
So that journey across the ocean, Black scholars and artists have called it the Middle Passage.
Yeah.
So there's this body of work, literary, artistic, political work that falls under this heading of Middle Passage memory. So I was captivated by this when I was doing my graduate studies at York, and so I just dove in. And for me, Middle Passage memory it's about inquiring, how does the memory of that middle passage, our ancestors' journey across the ocean, how does it live in the present? How
Mm,
does it live in the Black psyche if we think of intergenerational memory?
yeah.
How does it live in the current Western capitalist society that was built on the labor of our free labor of our ancestors?
Right.
So I'm interested in bringing this to the fore because I think that it's a Holocaust,
Yes.
an African Holocaust that has yet to fully be memorialized in a global context. So I feel like I'm contributing to that movement with my current work.
Well, it's clear that these things mean so much to you because you have created an entire business around it. And it's odd to even call it a business because it almost feels like it's purpose, it's life's work that would be done regardless of if you were making money from it or not. But being able to create it as a business has allowed you to do it in a full-time way and have this like rippling effect that allows people to be permeated by the things that you see and the way you see them.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I wouldn't call it a business. I call it a practice.
Okay.
But I would say the work of earning money, that aspect of the work, it's mostly through the education and the editing work that I have my most steady income.
Right.
And then the arts practice piece that is the vocational element, where I want to keep making work, I want to exhibit, I want to be published, I want to be collected. Those are the elements that are still in flux.
Yes, yes. Okay, so that makes me go back to the first question that I normally ask everybody,
Mhm.
which is how the heck did you get here? Where did you start and how did you get here? And knowing that it's your birthday, I find like birthdays are a great time for reflection and dreaming and imagining. Did you imagine that you would be doing this however many years ago when you first, entered school or had your first encounter with why this became important to you? I love
Yes.
this. I
Yes.
love
Yes, I think I'm on track of where I set out to be as a young person going into art school, into dance training. Certainly, I've experienced many systemic barriers as a Black woman artist with the themes that I'm putting forward in my work. So that has held me back. I maybe have been further along if I had not experienced, systemic racism and misogyny and all of those oppressions along the way. But Yeah, I remember finishing school and just, first of all, just being really passionate about children, and then starting the Black arts education, starting in that sort of work of supporting Black children to feel centered and celebrating their African heritage and through dance and art. And so that was right from the get-go. And then,
So are you talking like from university or
yeah, yeah.
even before that? When did you start doing dance and art in that space?
Well, I would say my grandma was my first teacher as an artist, Tootsie Seguin. I have to hail her up.
Big up, grandma.
You know, my Jewish Romanian grandma.
Okay.
And so she was quite an innovator in her time. To be an artist in her generation, it was quite unusual. And so I was immersed in many different media in her studio from a young age. So I would say that that's where, when I became an artist, she made me an artist.
And was it a time where it was rebellious for women to do things like this? And
Yeah.
so therefore your art by its very nature became rebellious because it was born out of that rebellion.
You know what's interesting? My grandmother experienced the tragedy of losing children in her lifetime. And she really turned to art as a crutch. She always said that it was her crutch. And then years later, when I'm reflecting on my arts practice, I remember when I was talking to my professor, Honor Ford Smith, hailing her up as well, who just retired.
I think I've heard of her.
Yeah, she was my professor at York in the Faculty of Environmental Studies, which is now called Environmental and Urban Change. She asked me when I was putting forward the concepts for my major research portfolio. She said, "Oh, is this about memorialization?" And I said, "No." I didn't want to go there. I felt like that's so heavy. Is that really what my master's is going to be about? No. And I looked back and I saw that I had been exploring themes of loss throughout my life before then. And then I think that because my grandma kind of emulated that for me, or no, I'm emulating her. She modeled that you could work through trauma and grief with art. And I think that I've followed her footsteps without realizing.
Can we be in the space without, we can't talk about the Black experience without understanding loss and grief. I think it's something that we could all have a PhD in if we all kind of focused in on and teasing that all apart. Was there a loss and a grieving that you experienced as a young person that led you this way? What happened?
I lost my mom when I was 18.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so
that's a big loss. That's a huge loss. And I pause to give space for her here, because for a young woman to lose her mother at like such a young age, as she's becoming the woman that she's going to be, I could see why your grandmother would be so integral to filling, not, you can't fill that space, but, you know, stepping up into a space that she had done for your mother herself. Yeah. Talk to me about, you know, how you navigated that grief and loss for yourself, because unfortunately, many of us have lost family members, mothers, fathers, and some of us have mothers and fathers that aren't present. So it's like a loss anyhow. How do you navigate that space?
Well, I didn't really know how to consciously grieve, so I just threw myself into study. I was at OCAD. I did a dance program at Toronto Dance Theatre simultaneously. I was doing 2 full-time programs simultaneously. So I think that is how I coped, by just avoiding, you know.
That's what we do.
Yeah. And there was also, you know, harmful behaviors of, you know, substance use that I engaged in my grief as well.
Yeah.
Which I managed to work through. But yeah, I think that's how I did it. I just threw myself into the studying, and
And I want it's a really great. I'm not that I'm like always promoting education or anything, but I want to speak to the fact that education also kind of saved me in a sense because it provided me with context, it provided me with language to help me express what it is that I was experiencing.
mhm.
So you agree? How was language such an important part of your own development as an artist?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had waves of awakening to language in my life. You know, through therapy, that language of, deconstructing lived experience through a psychology lens. I needed that language to understand what I was going through.
Yes.
Um, and at York, there was there were some brilliant professors that I worked with, Honor Ford Smith, Jin Harita Warren, Kamala Kempadu, who gave us this syllabus of all these Black thinkers, radical thinkers, queer thinkers.
Yes.
They gave me language as well to understand, to be able to speak to my experience and to see my experience in the context of
Hmm.
a whole canon of thinkers and creators. That is really affirming and healing when you realize that you're part of a historical arc.
Yeah.
Because when we're suffering, we can feel so alone and isolated, and we don't, we that's part of the wound. How deeply we get wounded is when we feel so alone.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Okay, so I want to talk about um, fostering African cultural literacy and how it can catalyze Black agency and nurture Black self-love. So that's just like a whole bunch of goodness. Let's
Oh,
break it down. African cultural literacy. Let's start there.
okay, well, these three phrases I've coined to describe what I seek to do in my arts education work. I'm dedicated to Black children, so I only work in schools where there are high Black student populations. And when I can, if I have funding, I can specify that I want to work only with Black children. That's controversial in some schools, but I've managed to do that.
Wait, let me stop you for a second because you said something really key.
Uh-huh.
Funding. You get funding to do these things.
Oh yes,
What is your funding? Since we're talking about Black entrepreneurs and
yeah.
there might be other people in the same space, what is the process of applying for funding for the work that you do?
Yeah, I do. I have applied for a lot of grants through the Ontario Arts Council, the Toronto Arts Council, and the Canada Council.
Nice.
They tell you can expect a 25% success rate. Uh,
For these grants?
yeah, so for every 4 grants, you can hope to have one successful one.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's a lot of writing, and the writing, of course, is unpaid labor, right? And each grant application, I estimate, takes between 25 and 40 hours to produce a good application.
25 and 40 hours.
Yeah.
Whew,
Yeah.
that's a lot of free labor.
I know. So you can build it into the grant as an administrative percentage. If you are successful, you can sort of reimburse yourself for that. But if you're
Right.
not, then you've worked and you didn't
Oh,
receive
wow.
any compensation. So I have had some success with my grant applications and have been able to fund projects that I do in schools.
Mm,
Particularly the Ontario Arts Council has supported my work a lot over the years.
that's beautiful. It's
Mhm.
nice that we live in a country where that can happen. I know that a lot of people apply for grants and they're always complaining that it's never accessible to them. And had I not gotten the right type of grant writers to help me, I too would be on the outside saying, hey, let me into this grant world.
Yeah,
What's the secret sauce? You
it is.
never I mean, you don't really know, but what, in your opinion, what seems to be what it is that they're funding for your type of work?
Well, I think that all of the funding bodies are obliged right now to generously support the work of Black artists. We're in a moment, we're in a Black Lives Matter moment. We're in a post George Floyd moment. And so the world finally woke up and realized, oh, okay, I guess, anti-Black racism is a thing. And so everybody's trying now to step up their support for the Black community in different sectors.
So if there's ever a time to do it,
it's now, and they have to. They absolutely must. And I always encourage, because I've been invited to sit on juries as well. So I in these at the Ontario Arts Council, and so they know, and I know I'm not the only one who says this, but they have to do the work to make their funding accessible to our community, which means outreach, which means, having a, you don't judge the grant, by how well they write in the English language. What if it's a new Canadian and it's not their first language, right? So we are coached, to get the gist of the message, but to judge based on the support material, not on the writing, So yeah, there's a long way to go for these arts councils to make their funding accessible to our community. And I think that they're making an effort now, and
they are.
Yeah.
They are making an effort. I might be biased, but I think they're making an effort. I noticed also here that you talk about Black agency. I really like the idea. It makes me excited on the inside to hear the word Black agency. What is Black agency for you?
Well, I think about, when you're drawing this from my bio, which is
it's a thesis on its own.
I speak about cultivating Black agency in Black children by talking about anti-Black racism, giving them space to dialogue with each other about their lived experiences of racial discrimination in Black spaces. It's very different if it's a racially diverse group. Then the Black students are not as free to express. They need to be in Black spaces with other Black students, with a Black facilitator, to be able to start to unpack that lived experience. And I believe that if we give them space to talk about their experiences of discrimination, then they begin to, then what happens automatically is this sense of agency begins to emerge. They begin to realize that, oh, okay, you're listening to me when I say this. Oh, and my friends in the room agree. And they also had the same experience. Right. So then it gives them that, just to be able to voice it in a space where they feel centered and heard. It is just that incremental building of confidence and self-esteem so that they can begin to, speak up for themselves in other contexts as well.
Yeah, I love that you work with, and hi, Mike Truth. When you were talking about language, I wish he was in the room before, because he also had an interaction with language and how it can also contextualize his experience as a Black man. And he starts to break down words all the time, and he reads these things differently when he interacts with the words, and just down to the syllabus, the
symbols.
Yes, like when he's breaking down what a word actually is saying. Even the word Black for him is problematic. He says it's to be lack. And so he likes the word melanated instead. So pick up yourself, Mike Truth, with your melanated self.
Really. That's the thing about Blackness that I find so astonishing and brilliant. It's that it's so multifaceted, and there are so many identities within it. That I embrace Black as a term and as an identity, as well as all
Yeah.
the other ones,
Yes,
you know. Yeah.
sure. And this is a really good segue actually to what you were just speaking about. For me personally, and what I wanted to know is I noticed that a lot of younger Black children, melanated, no hate to my truth, the melanated youth, when we've internalized so much of our oppression and we get into a space where we discuss our Blackness, I hear themes of, pretty much reinforcing the very thing that we're trying to be free from. How do you deal with that in educating the young people when so many of us are tied to Egypt? They don't want to go to the promised land. They want to stay back where things made sense, even though it was oppressive, and they've made sense of themselves through that lens.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's hard, right?
Yeah,
It's
and you
definitely
need to
hard.
have like ongoing relationships with young people if you really want to impact in a deep way, because often my work is project based, so I'll come into a school, do a project, and then I leave. But it needs to be, because it's an ongoing process of violence and oppression that we're being subjected to as Black people in
Yeah.
this society. It's ongoing. So that means our work to heal from it, to refuse it, to trouble it, to protest it also has to be ongoing.
Yes.
So
What?
we just have to keep, reinforcing for those young people
Yes.
about their beauty, about the texture of their hair, this color of their skin. And that African cultural literacy piece that you asked about, I didn't answer yet, is, you know, we need to have some cultural landmarks, or things that we can hold on to and say, okay, this is part of my African identity. I know this. I know what it means to pour libation. I know some of the African names for God. I know what an Adinkra symbol is. I know
I
how.
got one. Yeah, but yes, it's just
Right?
a way for me to see it.
Like, these are some cultural concepts. What is Ubuntu? What is Sankofa? What do they mean? And how are they integrally African? And this belongs to me. This is part of my heritage, So that's what I mean about the cultural literacy piece. And that really builds up a child to have those things under their belt.
Yes. I know for me, I guess I claim Christianity, but I also claim my Africanness. And I know for many people, those are like opposing ends, of course, because of the way that it's taught. And I think that's a big part of what needs to be teased apart when we are unlearning our oppression and recognizing that there's a relationship with God that is very different from the ritualization that our oppressor gave to us, that is so separate from where we came from. And so when you talk about libation, I could just hear all of the Christians just like, oh Lord, what is she doing on her show?
It's true. And then I have experienced students choosing to not participate in my projects for that reason, because they're very strongly identified with Christianity and they are afraid of these traditional African spiritual practices. So again, it's not only it's complex, the way to bring it, when it's appropriate, when it may not be appropriate, how to bring it in a way that is respectful to the traditions. I mean, I learned from others too. I didn't grow up with these practices either. I was born in Canada. I came to my Black identity as my dad really did instill in me this intolerance for racial injustice from a young age. But I didn't really come into Black community in that sense of my belonging to a Black community until I was a teenager. And so these are all learned concepts. But what happens often when we start to connect and research and learn about African history, we sometimes, and this happened to me, we find ourselves, we realize, oh my God, that explains why I do this and why
Right.
like that. And oh wow, if you get to know your day name from Ghana, like it totally suits me. I'm a
Right?
Wednesday,
Yeah.
so these things we sometimes in our healing and our decolonizing and reclaiming our cultural reclamation work, we realize that we have these things inherently, but we didn't know.
Right. Yeah, I love it. You also you work a lot with Black women as well. A lot of scholars, activists, and spiritual practitioners, specifically in the social justice and cultural reclamation freedom space. Why, obviously, you are a Black woman, but what is it about Black women that you want to save or participate with?
I feel that whatever I need for my healing, I trust that other Black women need it too. So
Hmm.
if I'm doing the work of my own self, my Black radical feminist self love practice, I trust that it's going to be beneficial to other Black women if they learn from me, if they just witness me. We model for each other, even without being in a teacher role.
Hmm.
So it's so important to me for Black women as my sisterin to step into our power, to heal, to be on that journey, to desire freedom, to to believe we deserve what we desire. That's
Hmm.
really, and these are words from one of my spiritual teachers, Ainania Ayodele, who
Yes.
taught me I deserve what I desire.
Listen, that's a bar. Some female rapper needs to put that into their
You
life.
know?
What? That is a bar. I see you have some fans. Someone saying Mosa is multifaceted, is a multifaceted healer.
Oh, Amakaya. Hey, Amakaya.
Oh,
Yes, Amakaya is one of my spiritual sisters. We're part of a community that is led by Ainania Ayodele. She founded an organization called Sacred Women International.
nice.
She is right now leading her 7th cohort through a sacred leadership training process, a 10-month process. And so I met Amakaya in that circle of Black women spiritual practitioners in Toronto.
Do those spaces, because I always hear about these things happening, and to be honest, if I can just be completely transparent here, sometimes I stay out of those spaces because I feel like women like me aren't allowed to be there, or that I have to have a certain level of awareness. And I'm saying this mostly because I know you're going to tell me that it's not true. And so I'm sure there's other women like me who might feel like they don't belong in that space. But what can someone like me, anticipate feeling if so much of us want to belong and we don't really maybe function in the same way that women in that group might function? How do we bridge that gap between, you're wearing the head wrap, I'm wearing the Kangol? It's like perfect. But I'm repping my Ghanaian culture here as well, but
Right.
my own way, you know what I mean? And I don't know
Totally.
that kind of, I don't know where I want to learn how to bridge that for so many of us, because there's so much value in,
Yes.
in these groups that so many women are not participating in because they may not feel like they belong there.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe their hesitance is legitimate because of experiences they've had in other spaces where they didn't feel welcome, or they felt judged because they didn't have a certain level of practice or knowledge or awareness. So, but I would hope that, coming to one of our, I hope you get to, oh,
Well, now that I know that this is a possibility, this whole thing is going to go up on its head.
What I found in the Sacred Women International spaces, where we go to the water's edge to do ceremony, we light fires, we sing, we do rituals, we And, I feel that this is one of the circles. I'm a member of different communities. This particular community is such a loving and welcoming community of Black women. I've never experienced anything like it.
I love
And
that.
I have friends from this circle. I did my training in 2017. It's now 5 years later, and some of my closest women friends are from this community. I think that Ainania really does cultivate that amongst us, this real deep love and genuine support for each other in
Right.
this community. So any sisters out there who are sitting on the fence like LA, come.
You know what it's like? It's like going to a church when somebody invites you to somebody's church and you're like, oh, I don't know. I know what I was doing last night. I don't know if I belong there.
Well, the thing that I love about this community is it's very eclectic spiritually. It's not one tradition and this is the way and the only way. It's a broad, I remember the first time I was in ceremony with Ainania and she named all these different African names for God. I thought, wow.
Yeah,
I've been in other African spiritual spaces where it's a one tradition. And so those may be spaces that feel a little harder to penetrate. But this one is very, and there's the sacred and the profane are not that different, and they're juxtaposed. I think there's a sort of a healthy irreverence, that sort of freedom of expression that also lives in that space, in those spaces as well. So
I love that. Becky, can you put the comment back up? I learned how to love myself, be compassionate, and give myself grace from being around a very loving community.
Mm-hmm.
If that's not an invitation, I don't know what is.
Yeah,
that's amazing. Okay, I want to be, because we're running out of time. I told you the conversation goes fast. So I want to get your thoughts on different words that come to mind, and some of it, of course, is drawn from your very own bio, but this one isn't. This one made me pause. It's a word that came up for me as I read through some of the things that you were writing about, and it's this idea of time. What comes up for you when I say the word time?
I think of timeless time. I think of palimpsestic time. I think of layers of epochs that are all available to us simultaneously because we have archives with our heritage and our history that is now coming forward. We can know about our histories, and we're in the present moment. We're imagining our futures. So I think time is not linear. It's circular. It's layered. I like to scramble the notion of linear time. Because look at me, I just turned 58 and I'm getting a second chance at dance.
Hey,
Like I stepped away as a young woman because I experienced trauma in the dance community and I could not stay. I didn't know how to continue, but I felt this terrible grief that I lost this expression that I felt I really wanted to fulfill. And here I come around. I'm the white-haired lady in the class now. And I don't care because I can still move, So Who says I'm too old, right? Who says I'm a late bloomer? I don't care. I get a second chance. That's Sankofa too.
Yes, that's what's on my tattoo. I have the dual Sankofa on my forearm here. I love it because I feel like I was disconnected from writing, and I'm turning 50, and although I've been published academically, I've never been published creatively before. And to do this work and to hear someone like you reflect back, like when you read to me my own work, and you're laughing at the things that I did on purpose to make people laugh, and I don't prompt you, and you read it and you just get it, and it's just such a joy to watch and to hear, and to know that I'm going to be able to share work with somebody based on that. I think I can understand very clearly how dance must make you feel in that way, and that
Mm-hmm.
it's not too late. And I think a big part of my work is to empower other women that are in the same kind of age bracket as myself. And now I look to you to say, yeah, we can still do this. Our world can make us feel like we're not relevant anymore at times. And we keep showing them that this is where it's at.
I'm telling you, the hottest women are over 50. That's what
Well, thank God, because everyone knows that I love a man. And you know what I also, not to be taboo or anything, but I am LA. I find that a lot of women who were traditionally with men, when they get older, they all of a sudden can be with women in a way that they never thought that they could be with women. And I think in that way, love is a maturity. I think it's a maturity that allows you to love another person of the same sex in a way that you didn't think you could. I'm not saying that that's what I'm doing. Right now, I'm very much into men. But I did notice that there's been women who decided, you know what? I think I can get what I need from an intimate relationship from a woman. And they've embraced that, and they've gone on to be, really, really, they're laughing. I think so. But that's just my own thinking out loud. Sometimes I should just keep it on the inside. I don't know. Another word I have for you is reparative labor.
Oh, yes.
I just love this. I don't know, I don't know what the actual definition is, but when I hear that, man, it just seems to make sense somewhere inside of me. Could you speak to it, please?
Yes, I speak about reparative labor in relation to my installation work. My current body of work is about the Middle Passage, as I mentioned. So the optic that is driving this work is this image of a path of bones on the ocean floor.
Yes.
This is an image that I believe I must have read it in maybe a Derek Walcott poem 25, 30 years ago, and it just it was indelibly etched in my imagination. And so this now has become the grounding image of the work that I'm producing right now.
Did you do this work in Grenada?
Pardon?
Did you do this work in Grenada?
No.
I saw in your bio that you have something in TJ Mary's show.
Oh, yes, I did. I did an exhibition there. Yes.
Because when there's the underwater sea sculpture of the people.
Oh, yes.
And so I made a thought about the bones at the ocean floor.
Oh, yes.
People. Yeah. But go ahead, sorry.
So the installation is comprised of over 200 pieces of stone that are meant to represent bones.
Oh, my goodness.
And I've treated the surface of the stones with encaustic medium, which is a ancient Egyptian art form, actually.
Wow.
And I've photo transferred text and images onto the surface of these slabs of slate. And some of them are, rectangular, like not 12 by 2 inches. So they look like they emulate the bones. And so I've been working with these stones and placing them in different iterations, working with different iconographies from different African cosmologies. And so the reparative labor I've found is the labor of gathering, right? I gather these found objects in my work. That's what we do as African descended people. We reclaim pieces of our history. We gather it together. And then I place them in these different iterations. And that is a form of honoring. It's as though when I do place the bones, I am imagining that they're my ancestors' bones. So I do this act with reverence and tenderness and love. And I feel I give myself that space to grieve their lives that were lost. They didn't receive proper burial. their bones literally are on the ocean floor. It's not a metaphor. It's a
No, it's literal.
yeah.
Literal.
So that's what I call the reparative labor, is of gathering and
Honoring.
yeah.
Yeah. I really, really, it stood out for me right away. Bones on the ocean floor. I read, I think her name is Edwina Danticat. She has The Farming of Bones.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about that, the separation of the Dominican Republic and Haiti and that whole conversation, which I've recently become very akin to Haiti, having met some Haitians, which is really, this is the power of our communities gathering and coming together, as you say. That in and of itself is a reparative labor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this new restaurant in Toronto called Boucan, which is a Haitian street food space that really looks to have that work, that labor of reparation of within ourselves as people within the islands to come together and have, conversations. And I think that we need to farm those bones out of the ocean and gather them and honor them and restore some of our love for one another, helping to build the trust, which is really hard for our community. I mean, when I think about it, I just get so tired. It's tiring. I really appreciate how much love and joy and energy you bring from looking at it from the lens of beauty and joy and possibility. Thank you for the work that you do. It's just amazing. I wanted to know about, I wanted to know what is when and where we enter.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a follow-up, I want to know when and where do you enter and what are you entering into?
When Black Women, When and Where We Enter was the name of an exhibition that happened in 1989 in Canada. It was curated by DAWA, Diasporic African Women Artists. It was a collective that was founded in 1986 by Grace Channer, Buseje Bailey, Marie Woodard, and Pauline Peters. 4 Black women who realized and decided that Toronto needed a space for Black women artists to come together, to create, to support each other, to exhibit, and they founded DAWA. They went on to produce this exhibition, Black Women, When and Where We Enter, toured across Canada to 5 different cities, and it was the first exhibition in Canadian history to be curated by Black women and to feature exclusively the work of Black women artists.
Wow.
So that's what Black Women, When and Where We Enter is.
Yes.
So then where do I enter? Well, fast forward to 2019. There was an organization, it's more like a network of Black women artists called Black Women Artists. It was founded by Anique Jordan, and it was a chat group simply on WhatsApp, and it just grew and grew to like over 100 women, Black women were on this chat group. It's a great space of resource. People are always sharing resources and events and things like that. So at some point, Anique formed an advisory committee and said, we want to meet in person.
Yes.
In the chat group saying, let's meet, So Anique was working at the Art Gallery of Ontario, the AGO at that time, and was able to secure the space to do an event there at the AGO. So it was called The Feast. 100 Black women artists and art professionals had a feast in the middle of the AGO.
Oh my goodness, I have goosebumps.
I know, it was such a powerful intervention. And so in the process, they wanted to honor something historical that Black women had done in Canada. So they did some research and found out about DAWA and about this exhibition from 1989. Right. Turned out it was the 30th year anniversary. So they invited some of us who were involved in that exhibition to be honored at this event at the AGO.
That's amazing.
So two of us, Diane from Montreal and I, she had already had this idea from the 20th anniversary. She was saying to Grace and Bousséger, come on, we have to do a 20th anniversary of Black women when we re-enter. Well, it finally happened at the 30-year anniversary. She got it in my year, and I was like, let's do this. So we regrouped the Dawa Collective, and we are in the process of coordinating an exhibition that commemorates that 1989 exhibition. We managed to get 10 of the 11 women artists that were in the original show to participate in this show, and we'll be opening at A Space Gallery in Toronto in November.
Amazing. Wow. There's so much history here. What kind of art was exhibited back then, and how do you think it will change now?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think that, you know, the artists that were in that original show were real groundbreaking artists in all of their different, there was installation, there was video projection, which is all the rage now. There were sculptures, there were veve, the Vodou way of making symbols on the floor with cornmeal and flour. One of the artists, Barbara Prezo Stevenson, was doing that. Winsome was one of the artists. Diane, myself, Grace and Bousséger, who I already mentioned, Claire Carew, Marie Woodard.
I've got to rewind this whole video and just write down the names of all these people and Google them.
Yeah, because we're still around. I mean, we have lost two of our the artists that died in the last 2 years. So we're going to be the exhibition is going to really be honoring them. The curator, our curator is Andrea Fatona. She's amazing. She's a professor at OCAD, and her curatorial practice is all about uncovering Black cultural production in Canada over the last 30 years. So our project was a perfect fit for her. She was really, you know, enthusiastic to do a project that tied so much with what is meaningful to her in her curatorial work. And so, you know, she wants to honor those two artists that we've lost, Khadija and Chloe Onari, who passed away over the last 2 years. And I'm allowed to say the exhibition title.
Oh, okay. Exclusive, people.
It's called Practice as Ritual, Ritual as Practice.
Okay, I love it. So this will be happening in November.
Yes, that's our first venue, and we have 4 other venues confirmed.
Right.
And it'll be over the next 3 years or so, I think, the whole project will unfold.
Starting in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So you're bound to catch one of them, people. What is your last advice for any artists that are both artists or are artist, educator, and, you know, practitioner? What is your last words for them to amalgamate these things and be able to do the necessary work, especially speaking from their perspective?
Well, there's lots of things I want to say. So important to find community. If it's just 2 people who you know, like, love you truly, madly, deeply, and are there for you. You need people. I'm thinking of Black women artists in this when I'm talking about this particularly.
Yeah.
You know? So that's so key. We have to have people that we can lean on, that we can celebrate. So that's so key. And I would say, just don't stop doing what you're doing, because I know it might feel like you're just scraping the surface, or you might feel like, oh my God, you're like 10 years away from being a master at what you think you want to do. But honestly, that incremental practice, that day to day. Even if you give up on it for a year and come back,
Yes.
5 years down the road, you're going to look back and say, hey, I've got like 2 years under my belt on this.
Yeah.
And it just builds. It's those of us who stick around, that we keep at it, that's how we develop.
Yes.
So don't think that you're not doing much because you're just dabbling or whatever. Just keep at it. And then as you keep at it, then you start to develop a sense of, okay, I'm doing something here.
Yeah.
I've got some history. I've got, a bit of a track record behind me now. I've been at this for like 6 months and I didn't give up yet. Okay. Like that's what keeps us, there are so many things that I gave up on because I was impatient to be excellent at it. I wanted to be excellent right away.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the patience to stick it out. And then I look, wow, this dude started playing the guitar when I said I wanted to play the guitar. Now 3 years later, look at where he's at, and I didn't do it because I didn't want to.
So true.
You know what I mean? So I would say that would be my advice.
That's really great advice. Thank you so much. What does Mosa thirst for?
Freedom. I thirst for freedom. I want to be free to make my work. I want to be free to travel. I want to be free to support those other sisters out there. I need the resources to have that freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thirst for freedom.
I love that. How do people reach you, Mosa?
Well, I'm Sister Freedom on Instagram.
Well, there you go. So it's true. You're going to manifest this, I can tell.
And my website, I think it's up there on the banner too, mosamcneilly.com. You can reach me there as well.
Yes. And I highly endorse her for editing, but only after October. Then you can go back and then only have her for a little while, and then I'm going to take her back again. It has been such a pleasure and an honor to have you with us on the Cocktale Hour. I knew it would be a good conversation, but I had no idea how full I would feel after speaking with you. And I hope other people that watch this can get a sense of not only who you are, but what is possible for them. And you are such a light, and it's so great to have you here. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Cocktale Hour, brought to you by Business Takeout. We are empowering Black wealth and Black entrepreneurship through the arts, culture, sports, and entertainment industries. And we are thirsty AF. And we are all going to die empty because we want to serve one another and love one another. So thank you so much for watching the Cocktale Hour. If you want to advertise or sponsor, hit up Banky and she'll let you know how you can do that. I'm your host, LA Wade. Thank you for watching. Take care. Thanks, Mosa.
Thank you.
If you enjoy our programming and want to help support Black entrepreneurship, please donate today. www.businesstakeout.com/donate.